Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to The Mouse Says The Butler Didn't Do It Mysteries, written by me, Nico Scher, under the pen name of Cheryl Ann Butler. In the background, where we live, you will hear my dogs howling. That's Sean and Romy, our two big guys, and they are howling to warn the coyotes off of our land. When last we met, there was some interesting intrigue with Reed, as we now know that there are problems that he has managed to have complicated in his world, and that he may be in some serious trouble at this point. Ghram knows nothing about it other than the fact that he knows that the money he sent out that was found went to a good cause, in that of Ruby Bloomington and her children. You hear Mouse growling and grumbling in the background because Maggie Lou is pestering her. So, let's see what happens as they got home and Storm started to read the paperwork. Chapter 85. Jim sat on the arm of the love seat next to Ghram and placed his hand on his younger brother's shoulder in a silent congratulation. Storm picked up the envelope. It was huge, faded, yellow from its white, torn in places and packed full of stuff. With shaking hands, he tore open the rip line. Here goes. He lowered the recliner to sit upright and dumped the contents onto the table, then pulled the second smaller bubble mailer from the inside of the first. Not everything came out as he set it aside. Don't toss the envelope. Caleb taped the keys to it there and wrote the unit's number and the address of the storage facility on it, Jim advised. Dad needs to put the info in his phone book, and these keys go onto his key ring. Monday, while you're in surgery, I'm off that day. Dad will give me the keys and address, and I'll drive down there and change all the locks and put the new extra ones on the units, so you solely have access. He nodded to Storm. Garville put the second lock on each, so no one can get past it if they have a second key to the lock that was on there. He stepped back. They had to cut the others off and replace them with new ones. I had the keys to those locks, and I gave them to Dad. Storm handed the torn piece of envelope that had the key, numbers, and address on it to Destiny. Thanks, Uncle Jim. He gave a second nod. Welcome. We have no idea what's in there, in any of them, and I want to code a present when we unload the stuff and go through it, just in case it holds something more than just paperwork, furniture, and bric-a-brac. One of them may have hid something else in there after he pulled his stunt, and it may not be legal, or there's a nasty surprise. Because I and Richie don't trust either your mother, your grandmother, or with their reputation over the years, and your great-grandmother is a fucking whack job on that side of the family. Storm looked him in the eyes. I agree, Uncle Jim, and we don't know if there's something in there she may have been holding for someone, like one of her girlfriends or even Reed. He opened the envelope marked birth certificates and removed several pages. Dad, you better look at these. He handed them to Ghram. What are they? Christina leaned up and over to see from where she sat on the floor. Well, I'm going to have to re-register for him for school. This is a copy of his original birth certificate. Remember, a copy. Stormy Ambrosius Dawkin. Ambrosius! Storm growled. I have never. Hold it. Ghram now snickered, having his son glare at him. She was thinking Greek for your grandma, apparently. She changed it to Thelodious Christian Calhoun. My name, not Reed's, is listed as your father on the official birth certificate. Ghram Pepsin Calhoun. And it has the seal from the Department of Vital Records in Harrisburg. He's mine, guys. This and the paternity test will prove it. He folded the 2 pages and put them in the envelope, then opened the third to study. Chrissy's eyes widened. Paternity test? Yep, sissy, 99.9% positive. No doubt he's mine. He was slow in his drawl out of the last word as he read the third paper. What's wrong? Jim leaned over his shoulder, then pulled the papers from his hand. Fuck. Dad. He looked at Tootie, as did Ghram. How the fuck? What? Chris rose to take the papers. He read down it, then flipped through and read the others and stared at Ghram. Dad, I don't know how this could be. I was a virgin in that capacity until I think I do. And this is why they didn't want Ranella to know about Phyllis and her pregnancy. Do you ever remember either of them having you use a condom when they manipulated you with them doing things to you as a kid? All the friggin' time. George didn't want anything to show up that could be used to prove anything. But how in the... Wait a minute. What way are you figuring, Dad? Your braid, Jim stated. I bet it was used for DNA not once, but twice, then several more times over. Reed didn't want to have kids. He and George wanted everything for him. But if they could get you screwed up with more shit than this family could handle, they figured Ranella would turn her back. Only Phyllis thought she got pregnant by him, by Reed. I bet he used a condom, and when he taught her about foreplay, he used what he collected from you. Mom, didn't you say something about Ranella being allergic to latex gloves we used in science and dissection in school? Ranella was allergic to latex, yes. She broke out with a rash. What is going on? Natural condoms don't use spermicide because they won't stand up to the chemicals. Beth Anna looked at Jim. They're made of sheep's intestines, and as they don't have the spermicide, the sperm can live up for 3 days in them. Aunt Beth Anna? How do you know this, or don't I want to know? Storm looked from his father to his uncle, then to his aunt. Beth Anna smiled and waved. I work for Trojan. I'm a developer and a designer of new products. He blinked and looked at Tootie. Dad, what does this paper say? Ghram took a deep breath. It's the results of several DNA tests. It shows he dropped his head. Christ, when did I stop shooting blanks? I really have no idea. Dad, when does a boy develop the ability to father a child? Chris stood up straight. Viable sperm? It starts at puberty, around age 11. Jesus Christ, Ghram bolted out of the chair. I need 5. I really fucking need 5 minutes. He ran for the master bathroom. Dad! Give him a few, Destiny said. If he's not back in 2, we'll send Smeagol, Chris stated. Chrissy rose to her feet. On it, if needs be, but I will go through the door. He can replace the door, hinges, frames, and wall all later. LeBou rose to his massive height of 6'8". Moments later, they heard the shower come on. Grandpa, what the hell is going on? Storm looked around the room. Chris passed the paperwork to Destiny. You're his wife-to-be. You're going to have to help deal with this, sweetie. Destiny read down the paper. Each line she read, her eyes grew wider. Off in the distance, there was the sound of sirens sounding. "The eagles are flying," Jim said. "The what?" Storm asked. "There's a fire or emergency," Jim explained. "That's the sirens for the volunteer fire company. They're called the Eagles." "Mom," he looked at her, "what is that?" "We can handle this. It's just going to take him time. Tootie, this paperwork identifies Ghram as your birth father, not Reed." "What? How? He's 3 years younger than Phyllis and Reed. She was 14 when she got knocked up with me. He would have had to been..." She started counting on her fingers. 11, Chris provided. "Reed's bullshit to get him in trouble. Only it backfired because he was playing with your mother and she thought you were his. This was done when you were 6 years old. The date is October 12th of the year he was attacked. That braid was taken from him between January 7th and the 11th on the weekend. It was probably done to have this test. Storm was born in September of that year, a couple of weeks premature. That makes very good sense." Tootie scrubbed her face. "And now he's going to be a grandfather because of more shit." She dropped her head. "He's going to hate me by the time this fucking shit is done." "Oh, no. No, he isn't." Chris flipped the second paper in a series of several. "He may, yeah. Oh, shit. RCC was born on September 13th of that year." She looked at Chris, then towards the second sound in the master bedroom. Chris looked down at another piece that was stapled to the first page. "Christ on jumped up horseback. Christ almighty." He stormed towards the kitchen. "What is it, babe?" "Chris, will you answer me?" Ethel was on her feet. "Hold on, I'm on the phone." There were words that flowed muffled by Chris's now heavy Boston accented speech. Alice's name was the only thing they could make out. Then, "Okay, Sherry." "Sherry? Aunt Peggy and Uncle Hal's?" Chrissy looked at Ethel. "Legal law involving..." Ethel raised an eyebrow. As he walked back to the room, he stated, "So, IVF was a viable use back then at multiple infertility clinics, and you can have more than one that holds frozen sperm, ovum, and fertilized eggs. Test tube babies. There's no question of how RCC came into this world. How long can sperm be frozen for in one of those facilities is still be used? And how is it that even fucking legal?" He pressed the speaker. "Indefinitely. It's split between several vials and frozen. Then when it's wanted, they take the vial and slowly bring it to room temperature and the body temperature. Then they either mix it with the eggs or they implant it." Dr. Sherry O'Flanagan stated, "When it's deposited, the man signs documents for it to be frozen and for its use. Can it be hoodwinked?" "What do you mean, Uncle Chris?" "What do you mean, hoodwinked?" she asked. "Can a man make a deposit that isn't his?" She was silent for a moment. "If you mean, is the man watched? That would be invasion of privacy," Alice stated in the background. "Sherry, can a man bring a non-latex condom filled with another man's sperm and deposit it like it's his in the privacy of the rooms they use?" "Jesus, why would... What the fuck is going on? What's up with our Ghram?" Chris was silent. The situation sunk into both the lawyers, and as Sherry was a legal advisor for an IVF clinic, she freaked. Jesus Christ! Yes, no one follows the man into the room, and they deposit it into a sterilized container like they do for a urine test. It can be done, Sherry agreed. Chris handed the paperwork to Ethel. She read it and looked at him. This paperwork says it was done at Johns Hopkins Reproductive Center. It's from 10 years ago, but the specimen was deposited almost 16 years ago. How the hell? Ethel asked. She got pregnant that weekend, and she also would have collected it. Probably the same way Reed and George did. The natural condom, and she had some guy in there with her, and they made the deposit. Could have been any of the assholes from that weekend, or whoever she could con. But when RCC was born with disabilities, she didn't like it, and she wanted to try again. Then 5 years later, she made her move. It was stalled, and she conceived. Wham! Baby boy, no father is known. But when she couldn't handle his ADHD and the way that child can think and outmaneuver people with his brains, she didn't know where it came from, 'cause Tootie wasn't around her enough for her to pick up on anything with her. She was always with Twinkle, right? And RCC, with her diagnosis, she didn't want to deal with either. Wham! Foster care. Chris looked at Tootie, who stared at him wide-eyed. Sweetie, were you ever diagnosed with ADHD? I took an evaluation test for it in junior high. It was positive, but I don't take anything for it. That's why I fought Phyllis over the meds she had Buddy strung out on. Why I've been fighting with her for years over my sister, RCC, and yeah, she has it too, on top of the brain damage. Chris blew out a breath. Alice, Sherry, how do we get this shit to end with John Hopkins? That's the thing. If his name isn't on the paperwork, we can't because they're not listed as his sperm. Fuck. So she could do this any time as long as they are viable. We can get an injunction against her use of those. You have the paperwork that shows Ghram is the children's father and did not give his permission for the use of the sperm. In fact, he wasn't even old enough to sign that type of contract at the time of the deposit. He was only 17. So she's committed fraud, and whoever signed the document that the sperm was theirs has committed fraud, and it's a conspiracy to defraud. I'll see about taking it to the DA here in Baltimore. We'll deal with this, Uncle Chris. Just keep him together. Fuck me, I will. He ended the call to turn to those in the room. What? Ethel demanded. Who and what has gotten Ghram into shit? What's going on, Chris? There's frozen sperm housed in John Hopkins Infertility and IVF Center that is Gram's, and Phyllis set it up somehow. She used a thawed vial to get herself pregnant. What? If you're going to tell me, look at the papers, babe. Buddy is Gram's son. Through her shit. His blue eyes and blonde hair are from my side of the family. And RCC is his from those 4 days he was missing like Storm is. That's why she resembles Papoose so much. The Greek runs deep in her. Holy Christ, Ethel looked at Destiny. We'll get through this, was all the young woman said as she dropped her head. The water turned off. Ghram walked out to the living room, dressed in sweatpants and a t-shirt. His eyes were red and bloodshot, his breath ragged. Chapter 86. Ghram looked at Tootie. I'm so sorry, Sweetheart, I will stand. This is not your fault. Just like it is not Storm's, nor is it mine. Will you accept me as your father? If not, I understand. He turned to Destiny. I'm sorry, baby. This is not how I wanted to build our life and our family. Ghram, she stood to pull him into her arms. It's all right. Dad needs to show you another paper. Hold it together and we'll get through this. He turned to Chris. Dad, what the hell now? Chris took the papers Ethel held out to him. He handed the papers to Ghram. RCC and Buddy. Ghram looked down. He staggered back and missed the cushion of the chair and hit the floor. Dad! Storm looked from him to Tootie. Ghram laid his head back. My sperm is frozen in a fucking test tube baby site, and she used it to get pregnant. Is she fucked up or what? Jesus Christ, I feel like I've been raped all over again. And RCC is the spitting image of Papu. Chris went to his knees to pull his son up into a sitting position and wrap him in his arms as the man sat up and sobbed. I got you, Squirt. I got you. We're all here. At least we know who their daddy is, and that he's a damn good man. God, Tootie, Storm, I am so fucking sorry. I've never been able to be in any of your lives. Forgive me, please. Ghram wiped the tears from his eyes. Storm and Tootie locked eyes. No, they said together. This has never been your fault, Dad, Storm told him. You didn't do this. You cannot take the blame for this. Tootie shook her head. Dad, there's a question that needs to be answered here. Tootie, RCC, and Buddy all need to know. Ask away. Gram's voice quivered, and he raised a tear-streamed face to sniffle. Tootie bit her lip. Storm and I talked about this when you all came home, and he said I should ask, as I didn't want Reed as my father. So here goes. RCC, Buddy, and I want to know, can we call you Daddy? The only one we've ever had is Iceberg. Storm looked over to Ghram. What do you say? Dad? Mom? Okay? Destiny nodded. I think so. Ghram? She stood to kneel and wrap her arms around him. Yeah, that's cool. I'll be okay. We will get through this. Christ, I don't know how, but with Mandula we'll make it. And this gives us the opportunity to change all of your last names legally to Calhoun. He looked over his shoulder. I need to sit before I ass plant myself again when I try to get off the floor. Dad, Jim, stay close. I ain't stable on my feet right now. Sweetheart, you already did ass plant yourself. Destiny knelt to take his face in her hands and kissed him. Ghram sat there and laughed. Jim helped her to her feet for her to sit down. Chris and Jim took his arms to help him get to the love seat where Destiny sat next to him to hold his hand. Well, this is good, and thank God, Chrissy smiled. Wait a minute. That means... Holy Christ, yeah! I'm going to be a great aunt at 40? Fuck me! She flopped on the floor. That would be my department, my beautiful lady. LeBeau chuckled. Anytime, sweet man. She leaned over and kissed his cheek. Well, this means Tootie and I don't have to go through a relationship DNA test to make sure she's Reed's. Nor do we need to put RCC in trauma and Buddy through that. But that poor kid got hung with a shit-ass name of Randall Palin and RCC with Razor Cannon Christine. That's got to be changed to something they can be proud of. That eliminates one issue, but brings up another. Dad, do I have to use the Greek name? I don't think I can pronounce it, much less spell the doggone thing. And I don't want to be in the shit heap that D2 is in. I mean, Dad Silver has enough problems. Ghram smiled. No, you can use Stormy, which is what it means, or Christian after your grandpa. The teen looked at Chris, then to his aunt. Grandpa, okay if I stick with Storm? We got you with Chris and Aunt Chrissy, and now Christina with RCC. You throw my middle name in that mix, and it's really going to get effed up. Please stay with Storm. Chrissy sipped her coffee. It's a cool name. And I was thinking, what about the name for him from Papadopoulos? Papadopoulos is passed to honor them and that part of the ancestry. He'll carry the Calhoun for Dad and you. Honor Aunt Ranella that way. I think Aunt Chrissy is right. His grandfather agreed. I like that idea. What do you think, babe? I like it, and he can still use Buddy. After all, his big sister nicknamed him that. The Razor Cannon, though. Destiny smiled. We need to keep the RCC so it doesn't confuse her. But what about changing it to something majestic, like royally crowned Christine? Oh, I like that. She's a princess to start with, Tootie nodded. That's pretty, Chrissy agreed. Ethel looked at Chris. Well, it would certainly fit, as it appears they thought of Chris's firepower on the field as royalty and feared it. She's named after you in that way, Iceman. So mote it be, he smiled. Took notice she can do the Eagle TD dance well. He winked at Storm. What else is in there? Ghram asked as he sat back, still breathing heavily. Storm opened the next envelope. This is a copy. I can't make out the date. It's faded too bad, but Grandpa, it's got your name, or Aunt Chrissy's and Grandma's name with Ghram Ranella's here. He passed it to Chris. Chapter 87. Chris took the paper. Squinting several times, he moved the paper back and forth to try to focus on it. Damn it, I'm playing trombone. The man leaned into the light of the end table. How the fuck? Excuse my language in front of the children. But this is a copied legal document. We had one, Ranella had one, and the third was filed with the court. The only other one I know of is at Liliana's and Jackson's old files from Springfield Attorney at Law. He looked at Ethel. Babe, it's a copy of the legal agreement for your private adoption of Ghram. When Ranella signed them 3 days after his birth, giving us full and binding custody, with her having full visitation rights. Witnessed by Silver and Emily Anape, and Nurse Lorraine Lottie Springfield Applegate, Mama Licorice, with Happy and Bettina Boone. This was sealed. It was private. Chris looked at Ghram. You're ours, whether you like it or not, damn it. The three of ours. You understand that, right? Because this proves it. He leaned forward to pass it to Ghram. The man looked at it and blew out a breath. George's signature isn't on this. Nope, because he wanted you put up for adoption with Catholic Social Services, and Ranella asked him if he wanted his divorce then and there, or as an anniversary present. Ethel gave a smile and held Chris's hand. Shit, Mom, Dad, I don't ever remember her being that tough on people. She was always easygoing and so very sweet. She cared about everyone. Look at Aunt Lottie. When Mama Licorice lost Uncle Gabe on the coal, she stepped in so Aunt Lottie could recover with the kids and their first grandbaby. Ranella was like that always. She was totally a doll to work with, but George overstepped his bounds. Long time in passing, Ethel shook her head. Loved that lady. That's why she was the queen of our pyramid. Grandpa, you better look at this too. Storm passed another thick binder to Chris as Ghram passed the paperwork to Ethel. He opened them, and a second folded binder dropped to the floor. Ghram bent to pick it up and held it while Chris looked at the paperwork. Crap! She divorced him. Chris focused in close to the paperwork. This explains a hell of a lot now. What? Ethel yanked them loose and read rapidly. These papers were filed August 15th, the month before their death. Ghram, what do you have there? Ethel leaned forward. A legal envelope. He looked down. It says to be hand-served and signed for on September 5th to George Carlson on that date. And it has a registered number for a receipt, and it says this is a legal copy. The receipt is attached here. It's got what looks like blood on the envelope and the document. He tapped the green paper. Dad. Ghram held out the envelope as he looked at the paper. It's a certified copy number and numbered to number 2 of George's divorce papers. It was final. Shit. They were delivered with the restraining order by the constable. That's here too. Take a look. He passed it to Chris. His father looked it over, then handed it to Jim. Look at these dates on these. Gram's right on something. The brawl when he busted Nellie's nose and attacked your brother. You mean the fight when... That's why she didn't hesitate over you and Papu demanding the divorce and him being removed. It was already a done deal. Jim took the papers. The fight in the kitchen. This was delivered to the school, so he had been called to the office to sign for it. He went after her because that divorce means he was done. It was over. He was out of her life, and she would cut him off cold because Papu had them sign a prenuptial agreement where she retained everything she brought into the marriage, and he the same, but he could not retain anything she gained while they were married. This is in the envelope he slammed into her chest when he slammed her to the floor that day, and he said that he'd see her dead before she ever divorced him, and leave their son with nothing. Chris let out a long, slow breath. Dad, Mom, that's the blood of my birth mother on that envelope and that paperwork, isn't it? Ghram swallowed and blinked away tears. Jim held out the envelope. The night they died, their deaths. He removed the other binder to look at it. Hers and Yaya and Papu's. These are the write-ups for the wills and the wills themselves. Dad, what was the date of that will that was read? When was the date it was registered on? The one Reed's lawyer miraculously found. The one from, of all places, George's empty files in the office of the carriage house. It was questioned by Uncle Jackson. Wasn't it being investigated? The one that was read in November? I don't remember the month or the date, but the year was several years before. And yes, Jackson had several serious questions about it. But he was killed 3 weeks after the poker game, and we could never really look into it. The DA that was to check into it was killed with him on that nasty December evening on their trip home at the train station in Center City. And that's still an active cold case out of Philadelphia. Then that wasn't the right will. Uncle Jack was right. Jim held out the document. Doesn't matter. Mandula owns the B&B. Emily owns the witch shop because she purchased it from Ranella so she could retire. And Sonny and Emily own the building as part of the deal because they had the 2 girls that were named after her ancestor. She was going to retire and spend time... Wait a minute. She had something planned. She talked about real estate that was in her name only. Effie? He turned to look at his wife. Well, Dad, apparently it does matter, because the date on this was filed July 7th of the year they died. It's witnessed by Michelle Dawkins Eric Johansson and Catherine Clark. So she still retained contact with them. When this was filed, she gave it to either Michelle or Kathy to hold on to, and they put it into the storage unit at one point or another for safekeeping. And I bet Ranella did that to keep the Mandula family members safe from George and Reed, which makes it legal and binding. Jim tapped the document's envelope on his leg. So, Dad, it's got other properties listed besides the B&B and the witch shop, stating the sale of the building to Aunt Emily and Aunt Sonny. Jim read down the papers. A place on the ocean side of the beach at 107th Avenue, Ocean City, Maryland. 4-bedroom and 2-bath, and a house in Philadelphia on Pelham Road. 10-bed, 5-bath. It's the Mount Airy section. That's big bucks, like Yardley. She's got an appraised value on these. The Maryland property back then is $600,000, and the one in Philly, holy jumping Christ! Mom, Dad, it's $4.5 million, and it says here they're both left to the foundation. But there's another property as well, the 40 acres behind us here, and Devon House, the building of the old tea house room, and that 20 acres that it sits on. It says here that these two properties are both left to Ghram. What? He looked at his older brother. How? Yeah, look, Jim leaned down to show him. The Ocean City and Philly properties are held in trust in Mandula Foundation, and they currently are rented and occupied. The income lets the foundation pay the taxes, do the repairs, and maintain the maintenance. Ethel reached out. But the other two properties? She took the paper to look at. The taxes are paid on these until Ghram is 50. Ghram squinted, then looked at his parents. That fucker's money. His joint accounts with his mom, our mom. Mom, you still are my mom and always will be, right? She smiled. Of course I will be, silly. Okay, thank you. But Ranella and Yaya Poppy and Papu Theo. You all just lost me. Chris stood to take the papers. He sat down to read. These 4 places were purchased the week you came home from the hospital the second time, after you were stabbed. The men nodded in unison. I know what they were thinking, and they're right, because Ranella was so upset with George for something. She couldn't tell me what, but she had me take them to the bank. She was so upset she was afraid to drive them. We went without his knowledge. She asked if I would wait in the car. Poppy and Theo went with her into the bank, and they were in there for over an hour. When they came out, we stopped at Liliana's and Coco's flower cart. My bouquet, Ghram smiled. And Max. He looked at Destiny. And that's the rumors were first heard about the starving puppy. No one could get a hand on it, Chris stated. Beastly. She started to look at him. She got him and brought him home Christmas Eve. Ghram smiled. Yes, Ghram. It took her a long time to coax him into trusting her. Her patience paid off with his loyalty. He was Storm's Christmas present. Ethel wiped a tear. Is that where Maxie came from? Your mom's and your grandparents? Yes, the bouquet was huge, though, Destiny. It was beautiful. Aunt Liliana ordered Max from a specialty shop in Ireland. So, he's an IRA rebel bear. There are photos of me with it and him. The bouquet was monstrous. Mom pressed all the flowers. They're the flowers that are in the box frames in each suite and on the walls as you descend the steps. Maxie is enormous, as you know. He has his own chair in our bedroom. Storm stared at them and then turned to look at Tootie. The two of them shared a quirky smile and caught Ethel's attention. It was just like their father's when he was about to say something odd. Ghram caught it too. Okay, I see that look, you two. Maxie is my teddy bear. Your mother, he smiled at Destiny, tried to swipe him in college when I was at a hospitality convention and had to attend it. Well, hey, Destiny smiled. At least be fair about Maxie. I had bronchitis and he was your size and I needed to cuddle with you and you weren't available. And I wasn't cuddling with Lily. Not happening. Besides, Jetty was the one who tried to drag him out of the study room and into the hall because she was missing you. I had to help her, so we brought him into our room, and I made sure he had his chair if he needed a break from us. But Jetty was in love with that softness, and she always cuddled with him. You know that. She chuckled. He carried your scent from your cologne. He's comforting when you're not there. He reminds me how much I've always loved you. True, he is my size, and he's absorbed the scent of my Drakkar. I'll give you that. The love remark. Right back at you, babe. He's 2 inches taller than you, Jim quipped. I carried him into the house here and set him on your bed for when Dad brought you home from work that day. That damn bear almost suffocated me. He's a 6-foot teddy bear? Storm looked at Tootie, who blinked at him. She mouthed, 6 feet tall, stuffed teddy bear? Yes, he's Barely's big brother. And you two got an issue with your sister. Do you two got an issue with your sister's teddy bear? Dad, can you speak with Maxie about this? Ethel raised her brow and smiled. No, ma'am, Storm shook his head. Nothing but respect for the brother bears, Tootie nodded. Good, keep it that way, Ethel winked. That brought a roar of laughter from all of them, which eased some of the tension in the room with what they were all reading and finding out about. As the snickers died down, the explanations about the bear began. That bear is 6 foot 2 inches and furrier than the real Dale, Jim grinned. He attacked me. Assault on a police officer. I'm telling you, I should have charged him and arrested him. But I would have looked damn silly filing that one as a report. Dakota and Richie both had a hearty laugh on my time when I explained struggling with a suspect that I thought had stolen my kid brother's heart. He just wanted to give a cop a hug. Who can resist? Beth Anna retorted and smiled. He should be furrier than the real thing. Ethel laughed at her children and grandchildren. He's made of imitation mink. So is Barely. But back to the bank, though. She and Papu and Poppy closed out all the joint bank accounts with his name on them. As I remember, George threw a fit. Chris grew quiet for several moments. Something. He wanted to go somewhere or do something, and I don't know. I just lost my train of thought. He shook his head. Give me a moment. I know I ain't senile. Ghram rose to pace. Storm knew something was coming back to his father, and it was not a good memory as the man started to shake. Chapter 88. Ghram placed 2 more logs on the fire and folded his arms across his chest. Daddy, are you okay? Do you need... Tootie looked at Destiny. Sweetheart? Destiny stood. He pulled her into his arms to calm his tremors, and the now slightly erratic movements of his body as he shook. Tootie picked up the throw to rise from sitting next to Lady Lobo and draped it over his shoulder. "Thank you, sweetheart." Destiny helped him to the love suit. "Not yet. I need to sand." Flashback. "Dad, you and I went for a slow walk down to the river the day I came home from the hospital, on March 25th. I didn't want to be in the house by myself, and Yaya Poppy told you to bring me to the dining hall, and we would work on her teaching me several spreads of tarot cards. We took a break, and I asked you if we could go skip rocks, just you and me, like we did when you were home on leave and I was a kid. Yes, I picked them up for you because you couldn't bend because you had over 700 stitches holding you together." Chris swallowed and stood there to watch his youngest child. "And then you threw one of the stones, and you threw it so damn hard you burst several of those stitches in your throat. Scared the hell out of me, and I went into medic mode." "It wasn't a stone, Dad. George wanted to take me to that friend's motel, his half-brother's, the one in Wilmington, Delaware, the place he took me to right after my bar mitzvah, where they broke me in. He couldn't get the cash for the gas he needed out of the accounts because Ranella closed down all of them with Yaya and Papu, only leaving the accounts for the 3 businesses that George was basically cut out of financially, and his own account was only what he brought in himself, which, when looked into after their death by Dakota, wasn't much, at least not from legal means, like the principal's paycheck," Jim stated. Ghram blew out a breath. Ranella would not pay a penny into it, but he still paged me to meet him at the carriage house. Instead, by that time, Ranella was living at the caretaker's house, and he was and Reed and him had the apartment. That's where he handled his office duties, shall we say. They didn't dare have me go to that apartment because Miss Pinky was there, and she was the police beat reporter and an investigative reporter, and her husband, Mr. Dale Bellows. Dad, didn't he work with Woodward and Bernstein at the Washington Post in the 60s and early 70s through the late 90s when he retired? They are who owned that building, and she knew everyone in there. Ghram swung around to look at his father. What's just hit you? I know something just has, by the way you're reacting." Chris reached for him. "Those apartments." "Wait a minute, Dad." Miss Pinky refused to have him sign another lease because he and Reed, they moved to the guest house at the Berkshires. Jim looked at Ghram. He tried that one time, and she cornered him and asked why he was bringing Crazy Leg's son to his apartment. When he didn't give her an answer, she was going to call Mom. He came up with the excuse we were just stopping by for him to pick something up, and he was to drop me off at the wood shop, which he did because she made the call there, and Ranella called him and demanded that I be dropped off right then and there, and he almost shit because when I wasn't there in time, she thought I should be. She called Dakota to escort me there, and he showed up at the apartment. I do remember that. Yes, Ranella was furious, and Dakota brought you to the shop. That's when it was decided that Peggy would solely be bringing you home, or to the inn or the shop, and within weeks you wanted the bike for your 13th birthday. Ghram sighed. Almost 6 months later was the end of his lease. He moved. The new place was in Yardley, the Wisteria Manor on the private estate of Dr. and Mrs. Berkshire. So when the beeper went off that day on March, I asked Dad to go for a walk, like we did when we would do that when he was on leave. You asked me to go for the walk and do something we did when you were a child. You said you wanted to rekindle our relationship from memories you had and had special dreams about in the hospital. Good memories. I got it, son. I remember. He wanted to take a vacation day and go to a resort or someplace, and Renella told him she wasn't paying for his gas or anything to go party on her dime. He could get himself a part-time job stocking shelves at the Acme in Morrisville. But you just said it wasn't a stone you chucked. Ghram shook his head. Dad, actually, that Acme was in Langhorne. And no, it wasn't. It was the freaking pager, and he knew it, because he was right behind us. He followed us when he realized I wasn't responding, and he had panic set in. He thought I was going to tell you everything, and that would have meant he was history with everyone. Flash forward to the day you, Tucker, Jess, and Dan answered my call to the office, and he belted me in front of you. The pager was going off when I threw it. You're right, Dad. It was as hard as I could muster. When we went to walk back, he tried to get in your grill about me being outside on the day I came home, because it was just starting to drizzle a bit, and he wanted to take me to the carriage house to rest. You told him to fuck off. I was your son, and you would take care of me, even if it meant canceling the reservations for dinner that night. Chris folded his arms over his chest. I remember it now. Yes, I do. We took you home because of the bleeding. Mom made the call to Wolf, and we canceled all dinner reservations that night. Our regulars were very gracious because they understood our son was more important than their dinner. 2 days later, Chrissy raised a hand. You moved in with us in Washington's Crossing. The previous owners, who were foreclosed on, vacated, and we were able to move in early. She took the paperwork. Dad, this is it. Listen to this. It's Aunt Renella's rescinding. I hereby renounce all and any prior wills and testaments. That means the earlier will. The one he had read was null and void at the time, if it ever was even hers. The way Uncle Jack reacted, now that I think about it, it's possible it was a forgery. She brushed her auburn bangs from her forehead. Back to this. As this is written and duly signed and filed here in the state of Pennsylvania, my firstborn son, Reed Harlow Carlson, is hereby removed from any and all accounts, business properties, business ventures, real estate, vehicles, and property known as the Crystal Heart Lodge Inn, Bed and Breakfast, and I hereby rescind any relationship regarding him or his birth father, that of George Willer Carlson, as we have finalized the divorce decree and in accordance with the prenuptial agreement, he receives nothing of my estate, thereby leaving both them the sum of the amount of $1 American to be split between the two of them. Therefore, I hereby invoke all stated above items to my second son, hereby known as Ghram Pepsin Calhoun, into his care for the keeping of my grandchildren, firstborn Dorothea Theodora, and secondborn Philatus Christian, thirdborn Razor Cannon Christine, hereby henceforth known by the last name of Calhoun, with the additional funds henceforth placed for the children that may have been procured through the actions of others on the dates between January 7th and 11 born to my second son through illegal means perpetrated by my firstborn son and his father, until the said stated age of each to be the age of 35. The second fund has been properly set with Mandula Foundation should my son choose to adopt or proceed to have other children. Thus to include the said amount to be set aside for college and continued education hereby set in the document in turn in Mandula Foundation and set up through the rollover of CDs and continued expanse of money market portfolio set up in all four names. There is bestowed upon Ghram the sum of $5 million and the attached file document to include Judeo-Christian Constantine Calhoun and Ethel Sarah Calhoun and Silver Bear and Emily Duchess Enepe. See attached documents. Chrissy wiped her eyes and blinked. I do hereby within do duly sign this legal final last will and testament on this day of August 1st. Chrissy trailed off at the year. And it is signed, notarized, and has a file date, time, and location. The attorney is Booker T. Williams, Jr. It says here, see attached documents. But there's nothing attached, Dad. Chrissy looked up at Tootie. Sweetie, what is Buddy's birth date? April 15th, tax deadline day. Why, Aunt Chrissy? Your name is here. Storm's name is on this, as is RCC. It's not me. Got me wondering if Queen Ranella was either told or somehow. She was a gifted witch and seer and empath. Ethel nodded. Peggy is the holder of her diaries. Let me make a call. She stood to step away. She very well may have known or found out some way that Buddy was Gram's. Chris blew out a breath. Grandpa, his birth certificate. I found out when I applied to get it when I was 18. Philly filed for a delay to file on the certificate. His name wasn't filed and placed in vital records in New Jersey for 18 months. It wasn't filed until the first week of October of the year after they died, Jim answered. Tootie gave a nod. I think she was up to something. I really do. And then they died in September, and Reed was pulling all the shit. I bet she was planning on doing a financial deal with their deaths, and it fell through. She chewed on her thumbnail. Chapter 89. Ethel walked in from the dining room. Peg, you're on speaker. Tell us where you are and what you got. Evening, guys. I'm at the inn. What? Why? Chris asked. Hut got a bad feeling with it being closed down. You know he gets that pegging stuff from Mom O'Flanagan. We talked, and I put out my Arapaho woo-woo. I got like a feeling. So we rolled, and we're here. And I spotted movement on the ground floor. The cranberry trucks weren't here, so it wasn't one of them working overtime to try to get this place fixed. I called Dakota, but before I could stop him, you know my hut. Chris took off to investigate. Chris growled. Right you are, quarterback. The man answered him over the speaker. He was out the door of the truck. He hit the inn door. Whoever the hell it was, there were two of them. I only spotted one, and he got blindsided. But he took one of them down. He laid him out cold with one of Chris's serving trays. Hit him hard enough to bend the sucker. The other guy took off in a pickup truck, but I got the plate number. When we checked things with Halani, it appears they were trying for files. Files? Ethel looked at him. Gram's, Chris, or my offices? I caught them coming out. Don't know whose, but Peggy and I are stacking them on the reservation desk here, Hutt explained. The files, that is. They were in Gram's and Ethel's office. They had the file cabinets open. Nothing seemed to be missing, but Hutt stopped him. The files hit the when Hutt stopped him. The files hit the floor, but I don't know what they would have been looking for. But I did look into the diaries with the dates Ethel just gave me. Ranella doesn't mention about, and I quote, what the fuck, and does mention about, what the fuck am I, stupid or something? Do these idiots think that I'm that dumb and have all the money that I'm not going to fight for custody of my son's children? First Storm's birth, then this bitch shows up with Tootie and precious RCC, and somehow I can't figure this out, but she has a baby boy that is Gram's and wants a fucking trade for cash for all three of them. I remember that bitch gave birth, and how I wished I would have left our Redsy tear her limb from limb for going for her quarterback, unquote. So yeah, there appears to be a deal in the making, and not only for the baby, who my guess is Buddy. Yep, Ethel answered. Okay, so Phyllis was offering up the baby and Tootie at age 9 with RCC, while Storm and she were 4, and Phyllis wanted the amount for all of their custody to be transferred to Ranella for $1.2 million. And the exchange was to take place at the October hayride. That date is written here. But they were gone the month before the day. Ethel blew out a breath. So she knew about him as well. Looks like it. By the way, we'll need to have all hands on deck over the weekend for some chainsaw work, and us ladies with the delimber equipment and wood splitters. Hutt and I have every fireplace going in this place. It's a balmy 58 degrees, but she is warming up, and we're going to spend the night and get the files back in order and double check to make sure nothing's missing around here. Is Hutcherson okay? If my lineman is hurt, I'm going to tear someone's head off their shoulder and shit down their neck, Chris growled. I'm fine. I can still take a hit on the front line. I got slammed into Ethel's desk, but the one you left a serving tray for her tea, I got my hands on it and laid the one dude out cold. The other one got away, but Peg nailed him with something on the reception desk. Don't know what, but it sounded like Big Ben striking the midnight hour. Peggy laughed. Chris, Effie, Ghram is going to kill me. What did you clobber him with, Aunt Peggy? Ghram actually had a smile for the first time that night. You know the solid brass thingy the registered book sits on top of? The swivel pedestal, yes? I didn't know it was in 2 pieces and that it came apart. The book holder has now got a good-sized dent in it the size of the guy's face. I grabbed it and swung it sideways like I do with my double-handed backhand in tennis your great-grandmother, Pagina, taught us. He ran into it face first, and when he got up off his ass, I chased him out the door. I got a partial plate, and the truck is a Chevy. It was emblazoned across the tailgate. Sorry, Ghram, I'll have to replace that. As long as you two are okay, that's all that matters. I can order another tray for Dad, and I'm pretty sure the brass book holder now has some added character to it, Aunt Peggy. Ghram chuckled. Do you need us there? Chris asked. And the guy Hut laid out, got an idea on him? No, you got your hands full there. If I feel I need backup, I'll call Pat and Hap, or our two big-ass Russian badass bookends. We're good. You all just found out about Tootie, RCC, and Buddy. I hope congrats are in order. They're all good kids. We're good here, and we'll all handle the wood supply this weekend and through the week. We'll get her done. The guy I put down is an illegal out of Colombia. They got him, though. Night, guys. Thank you and good night. Ethel ended the call. What the hell could they have been after? Ghram rubbed his beard. More than likely, as Storm was there, possibly they were looking for whatever Reed thinks he took with him, and he figures he turned it over to Dad and Mom or you. Chrissy looked down at the paperwork and continued. That will, the one Reed had read, that wasn't legal. What did he get? Reed, not Ghram, Tootie, or Storm. And if it was to be right, RCC and Buddy would have just been born, because they got nothing at all but a bunch of bullshit and heartache from him. And Jimmy, I'm falling asleep here, dude. You're late on the job. Get with it. I need more Java. She held out her cup for him to fix her another. Thank you, bro. Reed, according to that will, received the Crystal Heart Lodge bed and breakfast, $1.5 million, the carriage house, and the land and outbuildings, and six vehicles in custody of Storm. There was no mention of Tootie, who was only 10 at the time, and the other kids. But as you know, that lasted for just over a little bit over 8 weeks. He was broke and looking for more. Ethel tapped her chin. Storm looked at his grandfather as Destiny got Ghram to sit down, and Tootie settled on the arm of the recliner next to Storm. Ethel's eyes went from her 2 grandchildren to their father. Chris, look at those 3. Then think about RCC and Buddy. Yes, he has your platinum and ice blonde hair and the deep blue eyes of the old man and Pops. But he has Gram's elongated facial features like Ranella. Yeah, you can see Ranella, Poppy, and Theo in all 5 of them. And the platinum and ice blonde comes from Nana Esther, her Irish-Jewish background. We think there may be Austrian-Hungarian from many years back, centuries actually. There's something about the family connection to her grandmother, with her grandmother to Leslie Howard Jr., the British actor of Gone with the Wind and the Scarlet Pimpernel. The plane, the BOAC Flight 777, was shot down over the Bay of Biscay. Wasn't it during World War II? Tootie asked. Yes. Rumors say they mistook Howard's associate for Churchill. Other rumors say the Germans wanted Howard himself dead because they thought he was a British spy. But the Germans thought everyone was a spy. More shit says it was because the plane was painted camouflage and it was mistaken for military. But that plane had been fired on before by the Germans. There is also a statement that had the propaganda for the Nazis was pissed off because Howard made fun of him, and that they found out he was a descendant from Austrian-Hungarian Jews. That part of it, along with where photos of the wreckage came from is still an unsolved mystery like the death of Glenn Miller. Chris, get back on track. We all know how Tootie is your granddaughter by the two of you being history buffs. Ethel shook her head. The two smiled. Sorry, Chris stated, but what were you saying? What am I to do with you, quarterback? Only my man. Ethel blinked up at him. Look at the way they all hold their heads, and look at the jawline. Jim and Chrissy do that too. So does Devon and Pearlie. It comes from the old man who gets it from Pops. Pearl, JC, Cardina, Devo, Connie, Abu, Kata, they all do that. Molly's two children and their grandchildren. It's a Calhoun known trait. I wonder why I didn't spot that before after all of these years. I've been in love with you. Ethel smiled up at him. Chris stared at the kids, then to Jim and Christy. Son of a butterfly? You're right, now that I'm looking at them. She turned back to her grandchildren from her youngest son and blew out a breath. He came to Dad, Emily, Silver, and I, and wanted to know why he couldn't access the building's business accounts. And when Dad and Silver told him they were privatized by Poppy and Theo, and the fact that he only owned 45%, and it was his grandparents, not his mother, who had owned the B&B, and no matter what Ranella said, she could only give him that percentage of her ownership, as we had the legal and binding sales contract with Theo and Poppy, and that we would never sign paperwork giving him access to the business accounts. He really fucking lost it, and when I produced a notarized document that showed the sale of Poppy's and Theo's remaining shares to the Mandula Coven Hub, he came back with the statement that was Ranella. However, he was not. Ranella relinquished that title long before. What do you mean, Grandma? Storm looked at him. I thought she was the high priestess as well as that. She was. That was until your father came home. He has always, unknown to him, been the hub of the coven. We all knew he was as gifted as well as your grandfather, although he says he doesn't have any. Yet he does. And those shares were placed in trust with the Mandula Foundation and are still there. And that was what Ranella had written into the sales contract because neither she or her parents trusted George. Then Emily, in all her renegade bitch goddess ways of your Uncle Silver's Irish cream Indian princess self, told him to go shit in his hat and pull it over his head and see how he looked in curls. Ethel chuckled. Love that girl. He was also taken aback to find out that the van he demanded was long gone and that the vehicles were now in Chris and Silver's name as agreed upon on the day the van was sold to Rain for use with the equine part of the animal clinic. So, Dad owns most of the inn. Storm looked at Ghram. He blew out a breath. Afraid so. But Mandula Foundation is fully in charge. Stop, guys! But the Mandula Foundation is fully in charge of what happens with it. I'm strictly housekeeping management, like it was all those years ago. And that's why Skeeter is bookkeeper and hired as our CPA. And that's why Twinkle will be helping her out with that. Jim smiled. That's when the poker tournament took place. What poker tournament, Uncle Jim? Tootie asked. There's a story I only know part of. Can one of you explain to Tootie, please? Ghram asked. Jim looked at Chris. who looked at Laboo. The three of them shrugged. And that is where we will end the story right now with a barking little chihuahua who is barking and growling at her father. I hope you enjoyed this situation and that the story will continue in the next area along with the barking of our hounds. If you like this, please hit like. If you want to continue on with us with the nonsense that takes place as I'm trying to do this with these three clowns, please subscribe. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.